Hi and welcome to Explorations. Today our guest is Angie Strauss. She started in Greece, now she's in Niagara-on-the-Lake. She's one of our favorite artists and motivational speakers. I hope you enjoy the show.
Explorations, probing global diversification. We travel the world so you don't have to.
Remember how you felt when his embrace made your day. Remember how you sang, remember how you sang with resonating thrill.
I was actually born in Cyprus, and then I was raised in England. I was born in Cyprus in a small village to a Cypriot father and an English mother. And my father, I was baptized at birth as a Christian because all babies in Cyprus are. And then my mother was from a Jewish family, so I was actually brought up with two religions. So I'm very much tuned into just being spiritual and not really labeling myself as having any religion per se.
Right.
Really, yeah.
What about the ethnic side of things then? How has that impacted your life, do you think, in a general sense? And your art, I guess, as well.
Years ago, my ethnic side was definitely a minus because people didn't like ethnicity, especially when I came to Canada. In England, it started to be a diverse culture because I didn't leave England till I was 22. I left Cyprus when I was 5 years old, actually, moved to England. So then at the age of 22, coming here to Toronto in Canada was really an eye-opener because the first thing that struck me was, number one, where are all the people? And secondly, where are all the black people? There weren't any. There wasn't anything that wasn't like really, you know, it could only get white bread and things that I was used to, I just couldn't find here. It was quite terrifying actually, just moving here, not knowing really anybody. Very tough.
So how did you then manage to integrate? Because you really, I mean, from the moment that you arrived in Toronto, you were like full bore forward with business and whatnot. How did you take that step, that leap?
Okay, well, to quote my good friend Bob Dylan, when you got nothing, baby, you got nothing to lose. So I actually needed to get a job. And luckily, I was trained actually as a hairstylist. That's my training. I was a very good hairstylist. And I used to model for Vidal Sassoon and watch him work when he was very young and just starting. And so when I came to Canada, to Toronto, I just came here because I wanted a different life. You know, there was really not a lot of opportunity in London, and just out of sheer gutsiness, I think, just came to Toronto, and I needed a job. So Yorkdale was just being built, and they were advertising for hairstylists. So I got to Yorkdale, and I got to see the manager, and I'll never forget as long as I live, because she was one of the straightest people I've ever met. And she had like pince-nez glasses and looked down at me. And there I was with 3 pairs of eyelashes and a mini skirt. And she was asking me, which position would I like? And I said, well, I thought you were advertising for a hairstylist. She said, well, you can be whatever you like. So I could tell that I definitely stood out from the crowd at that point. So I got a job at Eaton's in Yorkdale, where I discovered credit cards. I'd never seen a credit card and never heard of a credit card because in England it was called HP, hire purchase. And the only people that did that were people that were poor and couldn't afford anything. So then I discovered at Eaton's that all these ladies had these credit cards, and no matter what I asked them to have, they'd say, oh, fine, just put it on my card. So I was on commission, which was really great. So that was a great learning curve for me. And I've always loved the company of women, always have. I love talking to women, love being with women because we're very open with each other. I mean, so often my husband says to me, well, I don't understand this. I've known that guy for 10 years. You come here, you met him for 5 minutes, you know all about him, you know, when he got married, where he lives and everything else. But, you know, that's just what women do. So from Eaton's in Yorkdale, I then got a job downtown at a very fancy beauty salon and was working downtown, met some wonderful people, had an amazing clientele. And then out of the blue, I met this wonderful guy, Hartley Strauss, and started dating him. And he was the first man in my life that ever asked me, what did I want? Which was very interesting, and tried to help me, you know, in my life. And at that time, he had a show on City TV for many years with Deanie Petty and then Marilyn Dennis. He was the first developer of Cabbagetown. So he knew all about old houses. And I was living in this little rented house on Woburn Avenue. And he came in one day and said, oh, I think I'm going to fix up your kitchen for you and things like that. And I was so impressed because there was this guy and he said, you need a new carpet in this house. And I said, well, I'm just renting. And he said, well, that's okay. I'm going to put the carpet in anyway because I think you need a new carpet. So we've been together 47 years. And we're still in love, very much so.
So you're saying you're a little bit mesmerized by this new experience in Canada. What was life like in the 60s when you arrived?
Well, once I got settled and working at a salon and meeting people, and then when Hartley and I got together in the 60s, it was fantastic. It was so alive. It was so much fun. It was street music. It was what they now call graffiti, but at that time it was these wonderful murals on buildings. It was love and peace. It really was. There was no AIDS, there was no guns, there was no anything. It was just clean and beautiful and fun. And what can I say? I wouldn't have missed the 60s, not for anything in the world. Not for anything. The music was fantastic. The clubs were great. There was just so much joy here. And I think that's the one thing I feel for, you know, my grandchildren who are 22, 25, you know, going into life now, and everything seemed to be such a struggle for young people. Jobs. I mean, the reason I came to Canada was in England, they were advertising in the newspaper that if you came to Canada, they would guarantee you a job. And if you would go to Australia and you would stay for 3 years, they would then reimburse your fare money. Well, I figured Australia was a little bit far, so I opted for Canada. And, you know, there was just so much opportunity here.
Interesting, because I was looking at your website yesterday, and you've got some video of your garden, and of course you've got a lot of examples of your paintings, and in many respects they look like each other. I mean, you know, whether the garden stimulated your paintings or vice versa.
Exactly. Well, a lot of my work, I do a lot of commission work as well, and that has pushed me in directions I probably would never have gone. I mean, I've done portraiture and animal portraits and things like that, which I really don't do anymore. It's very time consuming. It's not where my heart is. I'm a real free soul. I love to just blast up my music. And
Does the type of music that you listen to, and you obviously are fairly eclectic tastes, I'm sure, does it influence your art, and does it change the way you paint depending on what you're hearing?
It does. Definitely does. And it's interesting. The one kind of music that I can't seem to paint to is jazz. And I love jazz, but I don't find it easy to paint to.
That's interesting because you were saying you're such a free-form artist, yet and jazz is a free-form style of music.
Yep. But I don't know why that is. What I love sounds from other countries, you know, and with the classics, there's no beat. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to hear that. I just want to hear this flow of noise or sounds or whatever. I don't know what it is about jazz. I love jazz, and I love jazz singers, and I love music. I love Chris Botti. I'm crazy about him. But it's just not something I find I can paint to. Yeah. I love a lot of the new young singers, alternative music. I mean, my son is a musician. He's a music producer. He lives in London, England. And so I've always been introduced to a lot of different music by him, things I would never have listened to probably. And so it opened my eyes to a lot of different genres. But without music, I can't paint.
Now, when you're painting, sometimes you're doing it for yourself, and there are other times where people have actually asked you to paint something for them, a commission.
Yes.
What about your commissioned work? What do you prefer? Because one would think that a commissioned job suddenly gives you forces boundaries on you.
Well, my clients who commission me are really special. I want to tell you, because it's not as though they're putting me in a box. They say things like, well, I just want some trees. And there was one young doctor who wanted some of my art in his waiting room. And he said, I want trees. And I said, well, maybe we'll put some water. It's very calming. He said, okay, trees and water and a couple of bushes. And then he didn't want to see it till it was a great 30 by 30 canvases. He didn't want to see them till they were finished and hung. And he came out of his little office and he looked. We hung them, Hartley and I hung them, and he said, yep, it's exactly what I wanted. Now I want you to do me some snow. I said, snow? I don't do snow. Oh, he said, you can do snow. I know. So, and a lot of times people just love colors, and they say, I love those colors. I'd love you to do something for me, or I love that vineyard, but can it have a table and chairs in it? So they give me a lot of leeway. I don't really get people that tell me exactly what to do. That's why I don't do portraits anymore. I'm glad I did it for the discipline, but it's not something I want to stress myself doing.
Yeah, I've always wanted a big mural with palm trees and a beach on a wall. That's...
I will do that for you.
Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. That's all you have to say to me. And then I'll put on some Hawaiian music. We'll get those palm trees swaying, and I'll get my grass skirt out. Before you know it, we'll have a painting.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I love it. I just love to paint. So anything anyone says to me triggers me. It doesn't take much to get me excited. I'm really passionate about what I'm doing. When you're young and when you're starting, I used to wonder when I first began with watercolors, you'd read about artists being up in their studios and they'd be overtaken by the moment and so on. And I couldn't figure out why that wasn't happening to me. And then I liken it to swimming. You know how when you're a kid and you learn to swim and you can't understand how you can lift both your feet up and still be floating, and then all of a sudden you're swimming, and once you know how to swim, it seems so easy. And that's how it's been with my art. It's like one day I was struggling, and then suddenly it was like, wow, this is like, I can do anything. And at this point in my career, I will say I'm up to a challenge to do just about anything, because I have the confidence to know that I have the technical ability. I spent 10 years doing watercolors, and if you can be a good watercolor painter, you can change to any medium, because that is the most difficult medium to work with. But it's interesting because people feel that oil paintings are the real thing.
Right. What's tough about watercolors? Is it the layering of the paints? I know maybe it's the way oils they mix. You can mix colors very easily, whereas with watercolors, is it tougher to mix them before you apply them to the surface that you're applying them to? I don't know what you call it, a canvas too?
I can tell you've never painted, but never mind. That's fine. Okay, this is the thing. With watercolor, you have the white of the paper. Once you put color on that white, you lose the white forever. Whereas with oil painting, you can have something in black and paint white over it. So there's so much more freedom.
Right.
Also with watercolor, you have to understand that a watercolor painting needs to be disciplined and yet free at the same time. People that use watercolor and do very precise paintings, I can never understand why, because the whole idea of watercolor is letting the water flow and letting that take you somewhere and looking at that water. Wow, how does that looks like a cloud, oh, I can do something here, allow it to talk to you. And that is now what happens with me and my old paintings, the same thing. Like when I start painting, I just blast up my music and just start putting color on. And then all of a sudden I think, boy, that looks like it could be, yeah, that could be a beach. Could that be? It suddenly starts to talk to me. It's the weirdest thing. But I suddenly feel like I become the painting. When I'm painting, I feel like I've been there. I'm painting my dreams. There is no, I want to cry now. I'm sorry. But it's like anything is possible because you can paint your dreams. You can paint your imagination. There's nothing stopping you. And if you have the technical ability to do so, then boy, this is where it's at for me. Absolutely.
So you're saying you don't use models or you don't look at the...
Nothing. I just put on my music and I go to the canvas and I just start to throw color on it. That's how it is. I don't look at anything. I mean, so many people come into my gallery and they say, well, where were you when you did that? Or, oh, do you have those flowers in front of you? No. Because then it becomes very precise. I mean, it works for a lot of people, but it's not my personality.
Do you find that people tend to buy art? I guess it depends on the person, but do you find that people tend to buy art because they like what they see, or do they tend to buy art because it looks right in that part of the room or in that part of the building? To some degree, if I was an artist and I knew that they were doing it as a decor thing, I would find that offensive on some level.
I know, a lot of artists do find that offensive.
Yeah.
Not me.
No?
That's why I'm still in business after all these years. It's true. You cannot expect to just paint what you want to paint and everyone's going to love it. I mean, there's so many artists who paint and don't understand why they're not selling like Angie Strauss's paints are artists selling, right? I listen to my public. It's not a problem for me. And if someone wants me to paint a painting because the room happens to be lilac and they want something that works in that room, I have no problem with that. I have absolutely no problem with that. But there are different buyers. There's the buyer that collects art just because they love that piece of art. They don't care where it's going. They will find a place for it. Then you get the person that wants it to work with their decor. So that's a whole different person as well. Then we get into the new market, which is fantastic, called giclées. Giclées are amazing reproductions of original art. My original painting is scanned into a computer. From that computer scan, there's so many pixels to the inch that we can take a little image and we can make it like 5 feet by 4 feet and lose nothing in the detail. So this has opened up a whole new market because people said to me, aren't you afraid because giclées are so good that people won't buy your original art? Well, let me tell you something. People who can afford it and want it will always buy an original piece of art. Then there are people who would love to buy the original, but their budget doesn't go to that. Well, why not have a beautiful canvas giclée, which looks like an original? You don't have to frame it. You don't have to mat it. There's no glass on it. It looks like an original piece of art. So there's a lot of options for people now. Because years ago, when you went into a gallery, you saw a painting, that was it. If it was too small or too big, you didn't have any options. Now we can say, well, what size would you like it? Cool, eh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like everything else, the world of art evolves as well, and technology, I'm sure, is changing it constantly.
Yes, and I'm very fortunate because the fellow who does my giclées is the best in his field. He's a neighbor and he's wonderful, and his wife's an artist as well, and so we really understand each other, So it's marvelous. I mean, as I sit here now, I look in my garden and there's all these people wandering in and out of my gallery and my garden with big smiles on their faces. And I notice that when people go in the gallery, they always smile. And a lot of people say, can I just stay here for a while? And I say, absolutely, go for it.
Well, considering your enthusiasm, I'm not surprised to hear that you're also into motivational speaking.
Well, that was strange how that came about. What happened was when I first started the sweatshirts, there was a young woman who worked for the Shaw Festival, and she loved them. And she said, would you bring a few over to my house? I'm going to invite some of the actors over, and you should show them the sweatshirts. So I went over to her house, and there were about 10 or 12 women sitting around, and all of a sudden there was a silence, and they were all looking at me. And I thought, oh my God, they want me to say something. That's just how it happened. And so I said, well, I bet you're wondering how these sweatshirts came to be. And so I started telling them the story and so on. And then one of the girls said, my church is doing a fundraising. Could you come and bring some sweatshirts and tell your story? And I said, absolutely, why not? What do you charge? I said, oh, I won't charge. We just sell sweatshirts. I'll talk for free. And from that came my public speaking. And that's another thing that I don't prepare for, which drives my husband crazy. Because you can call me at 1 o'clock and say, Angie, at 2 o'clock, I have 200 people arriving and the speaker hasn't showed up. Could you do something? No problem. I'll just get up there and just start talking. And don't ask me what about. It has a title. My talks are called, I borrowed this from John Lennon, Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. And no matter whether they're men, women, brain surgeons, I've spoken to such diverse people, you have no idea. But I speak about life, and I speak about my life, things that have happened, and my feelings. And because I don't rehearse, and because I don't have a chart behind me, with a pointer, it's a whole different thing. I've even started tapping on the stage one time, actually, because I always love to tap dance.
Well, if you don't have a pointer or you don't have prepared graphics or something, it sounds so much more spontaneous and believable.
I once got a letter from a woman who said, because I'm always stressing to people, you need to look after you, because if you don't look after you, you can't really look after those around you. And it took me years to learn that. So I got this letter from a woman. After I heard you speak, I realized you were right. I'm finally going to do something for me. So I've left my husband after 25 years.
Yeah, you ruined somebody's life.
I hope he never realizes who convinced her to do that. But it's lots of fun. I love it. I still do it. And I love to cook as well. I'm a great cook. And you see, cooks and music and art all go together, because visually, I love visually to use all the different colors and just kind of wing it. And I don't really do recipes, So it's all part of the parcel.
So what's on your plate over the next little while?
Well, what day is this? I don't know. I never know. I have no big thing planned right now. But things happen all the time with me because I'm in touch with the public on a regular basis. I never know who's going to walk through my door. I just finished, there was a wonderful music festival here. Molly Johnson came and sang, and there was a great jazz duo with her. And there was a young classical pianist. It's the Bravo International Music Festival, which just started in April. And they asked if they could feature my art behind the artists. And also my art was on the brochure, great big full color poppies, on the brochure, which was really super. And we had a wonderful evening. They asked me to speak a little at that venue and to introduce Molly Johnson. So that was fun. So as I say, and that was just because somebody came in because she'd heard about my art, loved my art, bought a piece of art, came back, bought another piece of art, and then said, hey, could we put some of your art, in this venue? And I said, absolutely. So I've had a lot of adventures. I mean, years ago, when I think about it, going way back, I was about 16 years old, working in the West End of London as a hairstylist, and walking along the street, and an elderly gentleman caught hold of my arm and said, "Have we met before?" And I said, "Are you kidding?" And he said, "Would you like to be in films?" And I quoted an old English expression, which is, "Pull the other one, it's got bells on." You've got to be English to understand it.
Right.
But anyway, I mean, I thought the guy was kidding. Well, it turned out he had an agency for film extras. And within a week, I joined up. I was a film extra. I was in movies. I met Catherine Hepburn and Noel Coward and Sir Alec Guinness. Sir Alec Guinness actually came and kissed my hand at the end of the shoot after a couple of weeks and said, I've never forgotten that. He said to me, "It's been a joy to work with you, and I know you'll do well in whatever you do." He was such a gentleman, really. And whereas a lot of the young stars that I work with, like Cliff Richards and Tommy Steele and all these people, they wouldn't give you the time of day, you know.
Is that right?
No, whole different. You know, takes mileage to really round somebody out, I feel. And I think you have to. The only problem I have with myself is I'm such a passionate person about everything that, you know, my life is very high or it's very low. I worry a lot because I'm just so intense and so in touch with everything.
I had a friend who was a painter. Unfortunately, he is now dead, but he used to paint to music, but he would paint the band performing while they were performing, that kind of thing. I know that music affects your art to some degree. Have you ever tried something like that, or is it more just the stimulation of the music takes you to a place?
Because I'm a solitary painter, like I say.
Right.
I don't paint in front of people. First of all, I'm a very messy painter. You don't want to be near me when I'm painting.
You got to come in with a white cloth, with a heavy suit on or something.
Yeah, I wear coveralls, and actually, somebody said to me yesterday, "Angie, if you sign that, you could put that on eBay. I'm sure someone would buy it."
I think so. I don't know. We've kind of talked about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Is there anything to mention that we haven't touched on that sort of that you feel needs to be said?
Well, the only other thing is, I must tell you, I have wonderful children and wonderful grandchildren, a marvelous family, and we're very small, but we're very tight. And I get such a joy. I think everyone should have a daughter, by the way. But, I'm very content. And, you have to just... I can't believe I'm the age I am. It's just, life has just flown by so fast, and you hear that so often, but it's not till you get there that just, oh my God, how could that be?
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised when I see myself in the mirror because, that's not the person that I know, the person that I grew up with, and I don't look at the mirror very often. Break too many, but... I used to folk dance actually in with the St. Catherine's folk dance group, and we used to dance all over. Like I'm talking about my Latvian ethnic background.
Are you purely Latvian?
Yes. Yeah, and so the folk arts festival that happens every year.
Sure.
It's been years since I've done it. I mean, it's been 30 years since I did it, but we used to dance all over the Niagara Peninsula and many times in Niagara on the Lake and also in the Shaw Festival Theater there, and it brings back some good memories. I'd forgotten all about that.
Yeah.
So
I used to folk dance in Toronto, Winston Churchill Park.
Is that right?
Just St. Clair and Spadina. There was a park there, and every Thursday had fabulous folk dance, and my daughter and I used to go and wear long dresses and dance. So,
yeah,
anyway.
I didn't wear long dresses, but I did dance.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
For more information about Angie Strauss, please go to her website at angiestrauss.com or just drop in on her studio at Niagara-on-the-Lake in Ontario, Canada. For Explorations, I'm Nina Hilger. Oh, and check out our website at DZINTARCERS.com. Toodles!